Okay guys, we got the flush valve in. I say before we put the tank back onto the bowl, let me show you how you put the fill valve in along with the tank lever. Then we can get it all done at one time. Down to the bench. Okay folks, you'll remember in the previous video we replaced the brass flush valve and we put a plastic flush valve in. And you can see I put the flapper down here. Now we want to put the fill valve in, which I left out in the previous video. In this particular case, I'm going to use a modern type fill valve. It's got a self-contained float on it. There are a lot of manufacturers out there, but you know, I use this. I buy these professionally. You have a lot of choices. Now, when I put these in, I like to adjust it so it's height correct. What do I mean by height correct? I mean, I like to have the height of my fill valve about a ½ inch below the top of the tank, because I can always fine-tune it with the fine-tuning adjustment in terms of water level and water heights. So what I'll do before I set this up and actually get it in place, in this case, I'll take this little retaining ring off and I'll give this a little twist, and then I can raise it or I can lower it. Raise it or lower it. So let's put it at max for this particular case here. And then you put this locking mechanism on here. You have to make sure you get this locking mechanism on. If you just leave this down here and you put this in and turn the water on, this is going to go shooting right off. It'll go up on the ceiling and you're going to have yourself a pickle. So I have my height adjusted. I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to take my locking nut and with an open end wrench I'm going to snug that up, keeping in mind that this is porcelain. Don't go crazy because you'll crack the bowl. I'm sorry, you'll crack the tank. I like to face this pretty much on a 45-degree angle, and that all depends on the tank and the configuration where this is located. Sometimes this tube is over here. Sometimes this is way over in the corner. I like to keep a direct route from where the overflow tube or the refill tube has to go into the overflow tube. So, and these tubes come quite long, and I cut them and trim them. So you would get your refill tube, and that just pushes on here. And you have this little clip. Now this came very long, and I cut it. And basically you put your little retaining clip in there and put that on the overflow tube. Now, if you leave this really long and it's looping over the top of the tank, you're not going to be able to put the cover on the tank. So always be aware to trim this. Now, once you have that in there and we start to fill this up with water, what I like to do is keep my hand down on the float until the water gets above the float. So this way the float fills with water and has some weight to it. Then after it shuts off, you can decide on whether or not you have to make a fine-tune adjustment. I like to keep my water level about an inch below the overflow tube. Now you can do that by adjusting this fine-tune rod here, and you can do that with your fingers. That'll turn, and this float will go up or down accordingly. And when the tank fills up, you're looking to get your water level about 1 inch below the overflow tube. Okay, next up is the tank lever. So the tank lever I like to use is a solid brass tank lever, which comprises a few parts. You have this piece here which goes through the actual tank. You have the actual rod that lifts the flapper along with the handle that goes on the outside of the tank. And then you have the set screw that will actually hold the handle onto the rod. So if you can find these solid brass tank levers, I say go for it because they're great. You may have to search around for them. They're a little hard to find, but trust me, they'll be worth your while. All right, we have a gasket here. We have a square. And we have a square hole in the tank. And we're just going to match that up. Now, I know I tell you in relation to tightening things up and loosening things, when you tighten things up, you always go righty or you go clockwise. When you loosen things up, you go counterclockwise, and that is the rule 99% of the time, except when you're putting a tank lever on a toilet tank. Actually, in this case, the threads are opposite. So you're going to tighten counterclockwise. And the reason for that is every time you hit the tank lever on this, you know, some people have heavy hands and they'll really hit it or they'll tap it with their finger. And over time, if these were wound in the traditional way, you would actually loosen the handle. So to avoid that, the manufacturers figured out, let's thread this opposite so that every time you hit the handle, you're actually going to tighten it so it won't come loose over time. So we have this piece going through the tank. We're going to grab our rod. This will now go through. Our handle will now go on, and you're probably not seeing this now, but I'll turn this around so you can see this. And then we have our bib screw here, which you can tighten with a Phillips screwdriver, but for demonstration purposes, I'm doing everything hand tight. Let me just tilt this down so you can see the handle here. This is the handle. And once you have that in there, pretty much all that's left to do is to go down there and grab your chain, which I actually, by the way, already adjusted. I adjusted for height, and I took the links off, the necessary links off. And you'll put that, you have a choice of, in this tank lever, of 4 holes. 1, 2, 3, 4. I like to put this in a direct straight line, as directly, you know, in line as I can. Now I'm going to see if I can turn this around for you. But let me get this out of here, and pretty much there's your handle. So you can hit this now, you know, until doomsday, and this will never get loose on you because it's wound in the opposite direction. And pretty much that's it. You know, when you get that on there, you can, and you actually get the water going in there, you can fine tune everything. But that's pretty much how to put those components in, folks. Now you're ready to just take this tank and put it back on top of the bowl. You know, you're going to sit it on top of the bowl, you'll put it down, and then you'll get your remaining bolts and washers and bolt this right onto the toilet tank. And that's pretty much it, folks. I'm going to go over in detail the adjustments of everything in terms of showing you the water heights and everything else in future videos. But as a bench top demonstration, that's how you get your tank set up and ready to go. So listen, good to see you. Hope to see you in the next video. And please come back often and visit me. Take care.